So welcome. Hope you enjoyed the keynote. Everybody enjoyed the keynote? Especially the ending of the free Xbox for those who qualify, I guess, right? So my name is Tim Hewer. I am one of the program managers on the Windows Developer Experience team focused on native UI. And that is effectively XAML is the public native UI surface area that we expose. I like to always say that I'm one of the program managers. There's a huge team back in Redmond that builds all this stuff for you guys, and we do our best to take in your feedback and address and deliver the best platform for you to build great app experiences on it. So there's plenty of people back in Redmond that are your fans of the apps and experiences you create, and that you challenge us every day as we see new bugs that come in, and you guys think of interesting ways of using XAML, and we appreciate it. So on behalf of the XAML team, thank you very much for all your support and your app building. So as you saw in the keynote, we introduced what we're calling universal Windows apps built on this common modern platform. That's the session that you're sitting in right now. If you thought you were sitting in a Silverlight 8.1 session of what the advances and kind of the interop for WinRT with Silverlight is for Windows Phone, that's not this session. There is another one, I believe it's tomorrow afternoon, that will go into great detail. If you have a Windows Phone application that's in Silverlight, you want to continue to evolve it in Silverlight using more of the new features in the WinRT platform. We've enabled that for you, but that's not what this session is about as well. Additionally, this session is actually not about WPF. How many people are WPF developers? I'm just curious. Awesome, great. We do have a panel discussion tomorrow that I highly encourage you to come. And we want to hear your feedback. We want to hear specific scenarios that you feel that the areas that we should invest in WPF and desktop development. So that's tomorrow as well. And I'll be on that along with my other colleagues in the management team for XAML. So what we're here today to talk about is this awesome new block diagram that you saw here. And in fact, it's not new for those who have been working on the WinRT platform, right? This is the architecture slide of the WinRT model, allowing you to create, modern apps, whatever you want to call them, that are built on top of your UI framework of choice, your language of choice, the power of C++ to the productivity of .NET, or the breadth of HTML. We're focusing on the XAML UI stack here, and mostly the high-level XAML UI stack. So I'm not going to go into any detail of the DirectX interop. There are some other content sessions specifically about that. But what we've enabled in this release for Phone 8.1 is the common model that allows you to create apps that span all the Windows devices using that common UI framework. And we enable that through both the platform, which again is on the phone is enabled through Phone 8.1 release, as well as in the tooling experience. So you saw in the demo we talked about building universal Windows apps using Visual Studio. This is a free update to Visual Studio 2013. It's actually the quarterly update, so this is actually not the only thing that's in the update 2. This is update 2, which I believe was made available today for download. But for XAML developers, this represents actually a pretty significant upgrade to allow you to build these universal Windows apps that kind of span that. And the interesting thing is that before, when you had to build apps that kind of share common code, you would use Visual Studio to do some linked files. Possibly some of you had your own custom build tasks to do special things. And primarily, probably you were in the camp of sharing only code files or doing some type of portable class library as well, which portable class library couldn't support using XAML. Well, we're happy to report, as you saw in the demo, or hopefully, is that you saw that the universal app concept and the shared project system allows you to not only share the code and do that a little bit more easily than you have in the past, but to share any asset that you have in your project on this common platform. So that's not just code files, not just C# or VB or C++ files. It's all files. It's images. It's XML files that you have. It's scaled resources. So if you have qualified resources for scale factor or high contrast, it's localized resources. All of that can now be shared in a common platform through Visual Studio. And in fact, for this room, probably the biggest thing is that last part of being able to share your UI across the platform. So there is a session, I believe it's actually right after this one, that goes into a deep dive of this. I'm going to go ahead and show a demo of this to kind of, because I'll be working in that project system for some of the other demos, so I want to make sure everyone has the context of the things that I'll be talking about. But I do want to call out, and in fact, this session kind of serves as like a concierge of the other deep dive sessions that are going to be happening across the XAML platform and the tooling platform for this experience for the rest of Build. So, like I said, I believe this session is right after this one. The one that I'm referring to in the orange up there, or at the bottom if you happen to be colorblind, is using Visual Studio to build universal apps. And that's Navid is actually the owner of that shared project system. And he'll be going into a deep dive of the tooling aspects, and if you're a control developer, some of the things that you want to cover there. Now, with the shared project in the common UI platform, we want you to be able to build those experiences that span the different devices and maximize your reuse of code and be able to say, hey, I want to write this app once, maximize my sharing opportunity, and deploy it on a 3-inch device to a 40-inch device. But at the same time, we realize that you need to tailor your experiences for your specific audience. And in fact, we actually encourage that. So while you can share a lot of code and we have some controls that are highly adaptive, we want you to think about the user experience first and think about your customers and be able to tailor that experience. So the shared project system allows you to do that, allows you to think about that in ways of what should be common and what should be tailored here. So let's go ahead and take a quick tour of that. And one of the things we showed in the keynote was actually running Visual Studio Ultimate. I want to be clear, because we didn't call it out in the keynote, this update 2 applies to any of the SKUs of Visual Studio, including the Express edition, which I'm going to be using here. So Express is a free edition of Visual Studio. You can't use a lot of the add-ins like ReSharper or a lot of refactoring tools or some of those add-ins that people like, but it does support source control. It does support all the performance analysis tools that we demonstrated as well. So this update 2 applies to that free version as well for I think it's the Visual Studio Express for Windows development. And that's the one I'm going to be using here today. So what we have is, and in fact, I'm going to use the app that we showed, or I'll just walk through the app that we showed in the keynote. And just to kind of get you a little bit familiar with what the project system is here, let's see if I can. That's 500%, I think, is a little too much. So what we have here is we have basically a single solution now for your app. So I'm going to make the assumption everyone knows Visual Studio terminology, solutions and projects. So what we have here is a single solution that has multiple projects. The obvious being my Windows project, which in our example demo was our starting point. The second being I have a Windows Phone project here. And then the third being this is basically the new thing that we've introduced, this concept of a shared project. Now, a shared project actually does not output anything. So if you build a shared project, it doesn't currently output any DLL, any XE, or anything like that. It is a place for you to declare essentially shared assets, code and otherwise. And those get merged into the other 2 targets that are in the solution. So you can see in my project here, I'm sharing a lot of things. And we went through the demo pretty quick, but this was a real app. It has a lot of code in it. It's like 130 code files. It's probably a little lighter on the views, but has a full model, has localized resources. We only did it in English, but it is localizable. So even those assets are the things that can be shared in the project system. And as you build the app, again, anything in this shared will get merged into the individual projects. And you'll probably see in documentation and here in talks, we call these project heads. Not an official term, but that's kind of what we call them internally. So if you hear somebody say, well, what is the Windows head or the Windows Phone head? Those are the things that we're talking about as those project areas. So this is the universal project, and you can either start from scratch. We have under the store apps. I'm going to be using C# through my demo. That's just where I'm most productive, but this applies for VB as well as C++ as well as HTML as well in addition. So we have this new node that we call Universal Apps and provided some very simple starting points for you to start from. A blank app, which is exactly what it says, and the hub experience, which kind of provides that panorama experience on phone, and that kind of hero, we call the hero image experience on a Windows device. And if you have an existing app, a starting point that you had, again, just to kind of show you the flow of what it was, if I had a Windows 8 app, I can just simply add the Windows Phone 8 project, and that converts my Windows project into a universal app solution and adds that shared project for me. It doesn't add any files. Like Kevin said in the keynote as well, we make no assumptions initially about what you will or will not want to share. So you will have to make those determinations yourself if you're kind of converting those aspects, or even if you're starting from blank. We make some assumptions, obviously, if you're starting from file new project about some things that you could or should share, like some of the assets for image icons for the package manifest and things like that. Other than that, we make no assumptions, and we expect you to determine what is best for your app. Again, tailoring that experience. Maybe I'm using a certain SDK on Windows that gives me a specific experience, but there's a better mobile experience that I want to use for a different third-party library, and I want to do that. So we enable that capability through this project system. So I'm going to be using that project system throughout some of the other demos, but I just wanted to make sure and kind of set the context of what that overview is. So again, I want to make sure that you're aware of Navit's session. And again, all of these will be recorded, so if your favorite session conflicts with certain things, thank you, by the way, for coming here. I wish we were next door to Hanselman so we could just yell at him. But if tooling is important to you, please go to this deep dive. It goes really into how the context switcher works and how IntelliSense and autocomplete and those type of things are driven in this shared project world. But I think what you're probably most interested in hearing about is, like, what is that common UI? What is that API surface area that is common? What exactly are we talking about here? So we have, we shipped Windows 8 and Windows 8.1, and that was the Windows Runtime Platform where we delivered the XAML framework as a part of the Windows Runtime Platform. And as today that we announced in Windows Phone 8.1, we're releasing that same WinRT UI platform available to the mobile SKU as well. And so this actually has been happening over a course of a time. This, obviously didn't just happen, but ironically in Windows 8.1, a lot of the features, to just kind of tell you how some of the sausage is made here, a lot of the features that were delivered in Windows 8.1 were delivered by the phone development team to be able to kind of prepare for this common platform here. And so there is the goal was that we had a 100% converged platform. In reality, where we got was probably something like this. There's various numbers that people will probably throw around, but it probably looks something like this, a very common set. And that's the intention of my session here, is I want you to know what is common and what isn't, and to help you kind of understand what that platform is about. So I'm sure you're not interested in awesome Venn diagrams, so let's actually look at the raw data here. This is completely unscientific. This is basically a diff of the SDKs in the Windows UI XAML namespace. So as you can see, there's kind of a net gain of 58 classes and a couple structs and some deprecated interfaces. But as the numbers, tell the story, it's pretty good converged. And as you look at it yourself, you'll actually see that the 58 classes that are additive, or the net additive, have to do actually a lot with like some automation peers and some specific picker experiences in the phone experience. As you know, in Windows Phone, when you have a picker or a combo box, or is the same thing as a picker on the phone, when you have more than, I think it's more than 5 or 6 items, it actually goes to a full page experience. And a lot of those different things are different classes. So you have a date picker and a date picker flyout. And those make up actually a decent chunk of some of these new classes. So the number shouldn't scare you that it's like 58 off or anything like that. And again, this is completely unscientific. You can do the diff yourself and come to your own conclusions. But I just wanted to present the raw data of where the truth is. The truth is in the public surface area, and that's what you're working against as well. So again, the goal I want to do is to help you define like what is common. What are we talking about? And I want to cover 3 main areas here. I want to identify the things where the API is the same, where you can feel confident that I'm using this API both in markup and in code, and I will get the same, not only the same API signature, but the same behavior on both devices. Then we want to talk about, great, I want to know what's the same API, same angle brackets, same code that I can write, but what exhibits tailored behavior for the device. And then lastly, what are the things in that outer Venn diagram? What are the device-specific areas that I really need to know about as I'm developing my app that I should probably either be wary of, or at least those are opportunities to tailor my experience. And again, the focus of this is only in the XAML namespace. There are some areas in that outer area that are device-specific as well. An example, on the mobile platform, you have things like the new wallet feature. And those type of things. Those currently are not on the Windows platform. So that's just an example of a non-XAML namespace thing, but we're only focused on the UI here. I've broken out, kind of pointing out things under two kind of main categories, because I think when I think of XAML, I think of really two main things as an app developer. I want to know what controls that I want to use, and I want to know how I'm going to interact with the framework. The framework being things like data binding and text and the input aspect of things, kind of those underlying subsystems of XAML that help surface through the controls. So I want to talk a little bit about controls, but again, as kind of my concierge duty here, I want to point out that a colleague of mine, Sean Oster, is going to be giving a deep dive on the controls, specifically in the common UI platform, as well as if you're a phone developer, some of the new things that are available to you. So they'll be building up an actual app and using a ton of these controls and going into some deep dive experiences of how to do some of the nuanced things with the new list view, that is a replacement for the jump list as an example. So let's get started here and look at some of these. So first, I mentioned I want to talk about things that are the same, right? The same API and the same behavior. Now, the way that I think about these and the way you should probably think about these, and on each one of the slides, I kind of put in the upper right corner kind of my version of a legend of what is common and what is not. So green applies to both devices, yellow is kind of iffy, and red would be device specific. So as far as the APIs that are the same, that have the same behavior and the same API signatures, you should think about these as the core primitives. So in our layout engine, like those core kind of layout concepts of panels and stack panels and grids, those all are the same and kind of very little, if any, nuance between the two. The primitive controls that a lot of the other controls are built on top of, buttons, sliders, progress bars, radio buttons, those kind of core common UI patterns are there. And then while there are some differences in text that I'll get to, the actual controls that surface through for text are the same as well. The differences will be in some of the features that allow you to apply to these, but the actual controls and API signatures are the same. The differences are actually attached property concepts. And then shapes and paths are, again, more primitive drawing concepts are common across both here. So let's take a quick look at just a very simple example of this, and we'll just use the existing app I have here. And in fact, we will go ahead and we'll do that exercise. I'm going to add my phone project so I get the shared aspect here. And I'm going to move the main page to shared. And actually, I should move app as well. So I have this shared XAML file. And as we showed in the keynote as well, I get a design experience that is specific to that. And again, I'm not going to cover this in detail, but Navet will. But I can switch when I have a shared XAML file open. I can switch and kind of see how that view applies to the phone device or a tablet device. And in fact, I actually think there's a way that you can open up both of the views at the same time. That might be something that Navet's going to show as well. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm just going to put a stack panel to hold something here. Whose favorite control is stack panel? That's mine. Do everything with stack panel. It's like Excel for developers. Okay, so I'm going to do a very simple, button here. Again, everything that you expect is the same experience. Let me just close the design experience to get some more surface area. And the API signature is the same. All the features are exactly the same. And in fact, in the tooling, if there was something that you were trying to do that wasn't, you would see a yellow bang next to the API. So we still surface the API in XAML and IntelliSense, but we would let you know that it's probably not going to work. And as we do this, I use all the same features that I can as far as refactoring and those type of things, and F12 and go to definition, and all of those good features in the editor apply to the shared XAML file. It's not a special type of XAML file. It is the same XAML file that you have. We can do any other code that we want. I'm just going to do a quick. Oops. And if we run it with the target of Windows, we get the Windows experience. I'm not using the emulator. I'm just using my physical machine, so it's launching actually on the box. I've got a button. No surprise there. If I change the target to use a mobile device, again, I have actually no code in my mobile project. It's pulling in that shared code, and I've written common code. I have no if-defs or anything, and I get the same experience. Button in the center. It's going to react exactly the same way. So a dumb but simple example of where the common things is. So you saw that we used a stack panel. There was a grid in there. There was a button. All these primitive concepts apply to the same for both platforms. Awesome. Thank you. OK, so now let's talk about APIs where are the same, but the experience and the behavior might be tailored for the device specific. This is a great example that we actually like to use that you see on the screen here is the date picker. Last year, if any of you came to build last year, one of the Windows 8.1 features we did in XAML was the date picker, and I think I made the comment, never before have 3 combo boxes yielded so much applause, and it was, but it's a pretty, admittedly, it's a pretty primitive date picker, right? It is 3 combo boxes, that's exactly what it is. But it's fully localized, for all the language that Windows supports, it's 122 languages, and all the calendars, not just Gregorian and things like that. So it's a full-featured 3 combo boxes. And so the API, this is a great example where the API is exactly the same. The API is exactly the same that you use. And on a mobile experience, you see, excuse me, you see the experience that's tailored to the device, kind of, right? The one-handed solution that has the infinite scroll of the date selection, where it actually has the names on it and things like that. So this is a great visual example here of where we talk about things that have the same API but are tailored behavior. Now, other things that apply to this is some of the unique experiences where that are device specific. We have developed the hub control is kind of a canonical example. So the kind of design perspective on a Windows app is to kind of have this hero image with the hub sections. Whereas the design perspective from the mobile experience has been you have a background that is kind of a parallaxing effect where the sections kind of just live on top of, as well as it wraps around, right? Now, the API signature for hub is exactly the same. You have a hub, you have hub sections, the events of bringing section into view, and when sections change, from a developer standpoint, it looks no different. But if you were to run the app on a Windows versus a Windows mobile device, you would see that the hub on Windows doesn't have the wraparound currently. It doesn't have the parallaxing effect currently. And on the phone device, it has those things. But you, as a developer, didn't have to do anything to get that experience. So a hub is one of those examples that we use as a real canonical example of things that we're trying to do in the framework to create an adaptive experience for the tailored specific view of the device and the screen size. Another example is app bar and command bar. In fact, in the Windows Phone 8.1, the app bar cannot be used. We've created a kind of a blocking point to make sure that command bar is the actual experience that yields the commands for the bottom of the phone as well as the top and bottom for Windows devices. And I'll actually show a demo of that and how it points out. Date pickers is the example I showed before. List pickers is the other example that I mentioned that on the phone device there is an experience of when you get to 6 or more items on a combo box type thing, it goes to a full page view so you're not kind of scrolling on a small screen. That's a very mobile specific behavior that makes sense and tailored to that experience, and not a concept that the pickers or the combo box has on Windows, whereas the combo box on Windows has that kind of wraparound carousel panel effect as you select items. List view is another great example, and actually list view will be one of the demos in Sean's app where they kind of show some of the things. If you think about your mail inbox on a mobile device, how it has when you want to multi-select, you kind of go to that left well, or if you're in RTL, the right well, where the checkboxes come, and they kind of move out of the way, and the checkboxes start appearing. That's kind of the multi-select experience on a smaller form factor on the phone device. Whereas on list view on a bigger screen, we have the swipe to multi-select experience. Again, the API is the same. You enable multi-select, and you get the ability to get selected items and things like that. But the behavior is tailored specifically. Flyouts is another area, and this kind of spans both the same API as well as device-specific API. But in general, flyouts are available to both devices. The one nuance here is that flyouts on phone are allowed to be truly full screen. I think the API is actually called full window, but on a mobile device, it actually does use the full screen. Versus on the desktop experience, full window basically means the design guidelines, which actually isn't a full window. I think it's probably 70% of the window. So I mean, if you're on a 40-inch screen, you have a flyout, it's not going to occupy the entire screen. But again, the API is the same, the enums are the same, so using those, you just get some tailored experiences back and forth. Media, when you think about watching media on a mobile device, you always kind of want that full screen experience. You might have a smaller screen, so you want bigger hit targets and things. So the media player experience for Media Element is unique for the mobile device to kind of match that experience where it looks very familiar to IE on the desktop device. And actually the functionality is the same. It really is just kind of tailoring to that small thumb-based kind of interaction model on a mobile device. And the last one is actually something not in the XAML platform, but I really wanted to call it out because I think this is an avenue where a lot of people monetize their apps to make money, make additional money, hopefully, is through the Ads SDK. And the Ads SDK does have the same API signature. However, they have different types of ad units, they call them, right? So the sizes that you can display for a mobile device and the agreements they have with publishers of what advertising can be on mobile or not. And so this is, I put an asterisk here just to kind of, it's a slight nuance where the API is the same, but in fact, the ad units is kind of where the difference is. And this would be an area where you would want to tailor that ad unit to be specific to your mobile device here. So let's take a look at some of these. And so I mentioned, actually, let's pull up our sports app as the demo here. So one of the approaches that we wanted to kind of point out as well is how can you take advantage of the common platform and the tailoring, and how can you still use common building blocks and minimize your tailoring to kind of be very specific areas. And a big part of that is kind of the use of user controls. So user controls are kind of represent a way for you to componentize basically kind of create composite UI chunks for your code. So in the Sports League app that we had created, let me just run it so we can get some context here. Maybe I'll run it. So this is using the hub control as the main experience here. And the hub control is separated into sections. Waiting for this to launch here, hopefully. Could have colossal fail. There we go. So the hub control is put into sections, right? So I have this specific section here at the front on my Windows experience that we kind of call the hero area. And as I pan, I have this points table. I can go into detail of the points table. I can go back. I have another section here I have more sections here that span. But once I get to the end, I'm at the end, right? So this is the experience of the hub control on Windows 8.1 today. Now we contrast that with, we run the same hub control on the mobile device. I'm going to use emulator. I'm using actually the default emulator that's in the dropdown for new projects too. It's the 512 meg emulator. I highly recommend that as you're going through app development that you use the lower memory profile, right? It's one of the top selling Windows Phone kind of device characteristics, and it's great to kind of tailor your experience to those characteristics as best you can. So here we have the hub experience on the mobile device, and the first thing, instead of swiping left, I'm going to swipe right. And you can see that I have that wraparound effect, right? So that's the hub control experience on the phone, being able to have that carouseling or wraparound on the hub. Another thing is that the sections, sorry, the title and the logo at the top kind of have that parallaxing effect. Well, not kind of, they do have that parallaxing effect that as I'm scrolling, kind of you have that title is changing. Now, specific here, the background that I chose to do in this application is not parallaxing, but that was something that I optimized for that I didn't want to do. But if you could set it up that way to have the background parallax on the mobile experience as well. So if we look at the actual code here, the hub experience is a shared code. So if I go into my views here and I open up the hub page, we can see that I have my hub page here, and I have some areas set up for the title and things like that. But here I do have the hub experience here. And I have the header, which is the logo and the title. But then I have these individual sections here. I think I have quite a few. But these are no different. So in the sections of what I've done here, though, is I've made sure that, yes, I want to make sure that there's things that are common. I want to have a common event model for when the item's tapped. Those are things that I'm going to navigate to some page. It's going to be the same type on both devices, so I'm going to be able to do it that way. But the actual content of that section, I chose to architect in a way that I want to kind of create that composite fragment, if you will, in my user control. So that allows me to still have the hub as a shared concept and just say, hey, I just want to reference, and this is a bad example. Where's the other one? Here's one. So the data template for the first hub section is a user control for my cover story view. So because I have this shared hub concept, I'm creating a user control called cover story view, and I'm creating that type in both my Windows application and my Windows Phone application. And the shared concept is just a type to it, right? So it's just going to instantiate that type wherever it is. And that allows me to do either really drastic things in my user control that are highly tuned for the mobile experience, or just subtle changes. In my case, my subtle changes were just styling of the actual text and changing some of the text and moving it down on the screen. So my changes were very subtle, but they still were in XAML. I wanted to use different styles and a different kind of panel layout. And by doing that in a user control, it allowed me to kind of change that behavior. Similarly, in the leaderboard in the points table, on a smaller screen device, I felt I didn't have enough room to show all the points information, so I only chose to show one column of information. Again, putting that concept in a user control allows me to segment that capability out and still have the shared kind of Uber concept available to me. Let's take a look at another one here. So I'm going to go back to just my blank page. And this is our main shared page here. And I want to show the command bar here. So I'm just going to add a couple app bar buttons. And I'm going to add an attach property called secondary commands and add some app bar buttons to that. And let's go ahead and run this in the desktop first. And if I right-click, well, first thing to notice is that you don't see the app bar at all until I invoke it, right? That's kind of the design behavior on Windows, on the tablet form factor. So if I right-click or if I edgy from the bottom, the app bar comes up. And you can see that I've got secondary commands are suddenly on this left area. So that's, if you're not familiar with the command bar, the default content property is primary commands, which are on the right side. And then you can add secondary commands that left align to that area. So I have app bar buttons. I have things that are very visual on both the primary and secondary commands. And I have that experience that is the edgy invoke or the right-click invoke. Now, if I change this to the Windows Phone device or emulator, we can see that the command bar by default is up, right? That's kind of the default behavior of the app bar on Windows Phone. And I could either tap that button, in this case I'm just clicking it, to show those secondary commands. So this is the same API signature. I had primary and secondary commands, but secondary on Windows Phone means, I'm going to put it as list elements that don't have that visual indicator. But you as a developer didn't have to do anything different. You can still kind of use that common area. We will ignore the visuals in the secondary command for the Windows Phone device. And this is an example of, again, the tailoring for this specific behavior, but also kind of faulting you as a developer in the right place. So we're not giving you an exception that says, oh, you can't use an icon as a secondary command in shared code. We're just going to gracefully ignore the things that are not supported in there and tailor that behavior for you. So this is a great example of that here. The other kind of nuance here that is behavior, let's say I had 20 commands on my primary commands as an example. We will, on Windows Phone, I think we maximize probably 5, I think is what it is, 4 or 5. And then we'll just ignore those others. So it's kind of in reading order. Anything that you have beyond that, we just won't render. Again, we're not going to throw an exception, but we just won't render them. So it allows you to kind of get that maximum shared use. I would say if you have 20 commands in your app bar, you should probably rethink your design, but that's another session, I guess. And then the ads, I won't bother showing the demo for the ads. Actually, why not? So I mentioned user controls, and another way you can do it is, I'm not saying this is the best way, so don't curse at me yet. Another way you can do it is by thinking about how can I add UI via code but still do it shared. And an example is using the ad platforms. So right now and this is something that Navet will talk about, if you're an SDK developer, you need to create 2 SDKs to deploy. And so I still have to add those references to both projects. So let's see, Microsoft Advertising. So I'm going to add the Ad SDK to my Windows project, and I'm going to add the Ad SDK to my phone project. So now that I've had both Ads SDK, you would think, well, why couldn't I just put this in XAML? The Ads team currently has their controls, which actually have the same API signature, are in different namespaces. So those of you who are familiar with either using user controls or custom controls, how you consume them in markup is you put an XML namespace shortcut. Now, those are namespace specific, right? So I say XML namespace ads equals using and then the namespace. Because the namespaces are different, you can't use that concept in shared markup language. But what I can do is use a different approach in code here. And I can go ahead and have some specific code that says, hey, I still want to use that common API, and I want to use it in my shared XAML file here, but I'm not going to do it in markup. I'm going to do it in code here. So I'm going to actually add some ifdef here. And this is an example of what you can do in shared code here that allows you to still maximize your code reuse without me having to copy and saying, oh, crap, I got to put an ad in both. Now I have to copy a bunch of code. So this is a subtle thing that I want to do because the ad units are different and maybe my application ID is different. I get an ad ID from the phone store, and I get maybe a different ad ID for a different app or something like that. But it allows me, you can see here that I'm allowed to do ifdef here, and we have some default conditional compile statements in the project. Windows app is for large screen devices, and Windows _phone app is for the phone experience. And so I can just kind of create this using shortcut that allows me to kind of create a shortcut for the ads here. And then I can do, similarly, the code in here that I probably need to new up a... allows me to kind of do some more if-def here that says, hey, this is the ad unit that I want to use for if it's a phone app. So I chose to show you the different if-defs here so you can kind of see. And if it's a larger screen device, I want to use this different ad unit ID, throw this difference. So this is an example of being able to do this in code versus markup. And again, I could have actually done this the user control route, right? I could have created a user control that had the XML namespace for the mobile UI versus the namespace for the desktop UI. In my case, it's 6 lines of code that I had to write here in a simple if-def. And my user control was going to have some container anyway, so I'm just going to put that container in my shared code, and I'll add the ads via code there. So again, just another example of same API and kind of some tailored specific behavior here. So again, showing the example of the command bar here, this is the XAML that we used here, an enhanced version. You can even see that in this example, I used the XUID because I wanted that text to not only be localized, but if the phone experience kind of has that initial Metro design language where the menus are lowercase, so I wanted that to kind of bleed through. So I'm using localization for actually a tailoring experience as well. And that same resource file applies to both. The secondary commands, you saw how they adapt specifically to the tailored device, and on phone they become a menu, and on Windows they are kind of left commands. And so we see that in that experience here when you look at that markup. You see the primary and secondary commands and how they map. Okay, so the final section is like, where are things that just aren't the same, that are device specific here? And these are some areas that exist in Windows 8.1 and are not there on the phone, and vice versa. So in Windows in 8.1, we have a couple controls that assist you in kind of implementing the search contract or search capabilities, right? It has automatic support for kind of that auto-suggest behavior. It has automatic support for IME input, and it actually integrates with the search history and search suggestions and things like that. We also have that settings experience, that kind of charms-based experience where we have that settings flyout. Those are two things that don't exist on the phone experience, and so these just don't work. The search box and settings flyout just aren't exposed as APIs for the common platform. So if you need to use them, this would be an area where you'd want to kind of do a little bit more than an if-def, right? This is probably for sure where you'd want to do some user control segmentation or specific views there. On Windows Phone, we have some additional kind of canonical experiences of where you have certain UI that is specific to the phone today. Pivot is probably our prime example. Right, Pivot is a wonderful control on the phone that currently doesn't exist on Windows. Auto Suggest Box is a new control for Phone 8.1, and it enables actually the same scenario and experience as Search Box on Windows, but is not coupled to any search contract or anything like that. So that's kind of an iffy one. You could wield Search Box to your will to make it just a simple auto-suggest box, but that's really the difference between the two. Dialogues is another example. So if instead of message dialogue, if you wanted kind of a dialogue that allowed you to specify your own content, maybe it's like check button, something other than just text, because message dialogue provides you that capability. Content dialogue is introduced as the ability for you to be able to have dialogues that allow you arbitrary XAML content within that, and that's currently available only on the phone. Maps is actually on the phone, is a part of the Maps experience. Actually, Windows UI XAML controls Maps. It is a part of the platform. It's a part of the thing that you can leverage. And on the phone, we use we have a license agreement for the maps that we use on the phone. And on desktop, we do have maps. So this is an interesting one of whether it's device specific or not. But I put it up here because Maps is a part of the XAML platform. On phone, and it's an SDK provided through Bing on desktop. So that would be an example there of where you would want to do a user control concept, right? Because they also have, the maps have like you get your token from the phone store that's associated with the app versus Bing, you can have just kind of this global token. Maybe there's some pricing differences. I don't know. I'm not the expert on that one, but the usage models or license terms may apply differently from a mobile experience versus a larger screen experience. And then we have a concept of System Chrome. So System Chrome is, and actually I think I'm going to skip the demo here and just actually show you some visuals here on what System Chrome is. So I have a horrible looking app. Please don't ever submit something like this, but intentional to kind of create, to show you what are the different areas we're looking at here. So this is an app that has some content. The system tray is still showing, and I have an app bar. So up at the top there, that is backed by the blue border, we have System Chrome, right? That is the system tray. Other areas of what System Chrome might be in this area is in-call progress, right? So when you have a call and you go back to the start screen or something, you still have that in-call progress to be able to tap and get back to. Or notifications is a good example of things. And actually notifications kind of overlay, so may less apply. But those are types of things that we think about when we consider System Chrome for the phone experience. I'm pointing these out in the phone experience because we actually don't have a lot of System Chrome when your app is active on a larger screen on Windows tablet experience right now. So in the middle we have like your primary app UI. Like this is your code, right? So my awesome code is a red and green rectangle. And then at the bottom, on the phone, the command bar is actually System UI. It is rendered by the system. It is not a part of your app, whereas on Windows, it is a part of your app, right? It is content that you have. You actually can change the color of it. On phone, it is an API that's surfaced it's an API that's exposed in XAML that allows you to control the System Chrome. So that's an interesting distinction there. Now, where this becomes interesting is actually in the blue area there that is in the System Chrome, that is actually still your app. That is the page background. So in this markup here, you can envision that I have a page, background equal blue, and my content has a red and a green rectangle. So what we've done in the platform on phone is ensure that you have the best experience, because the phone wants you to show the system tree. Users want to see that information. They want to know what time it is. They want to know their battery indication. They want to know what locations are being used. And so we want you as app developers to be able to show that. We don't, however, want you to have to worry about if that's going to get in the way of your app, if you have to do any funky negative margins or things like that. So what we've done in Phone 8.1 is we've enabled you to choose the option of how your app draws on the screen. By default, we're going to draw your app content in what we call the visible bounds area, which if you look at this diagram would be the red rectangle. Even though the page is still the blue area, the red rectangle is where your app content is going to be drawn. Now, you can opt out of that. So that's by default. You don't have to do anything to get this behavior. What we would want you to do is if you do have a colored background, we would want you to set the page background to be the same as your content background. That's something that we would like you to do. Because if you don't, you're just going to get a black system tray. And that's kind of a poor user experience for you. And actually, when you see animations moving from page to page, you'll see that kind of some tearing effect because you've chosen two different colors. So we want, and again, I explicitly chose blue just so you could see the background, but ideally you would say page background equal red here if this was my real app. So you can opt out of this by setting the desired bound mode. Why you would do this? You don't have any content that's going to be in the way up there. You have a game that's going to be in landscape mode or something like that. But you can set the application view to say, I want to use all of the window. Don't put any margins on me. Draw my content everywhere from edge to edge that you can see it. And so we will draw your content underneath any Chrome areas. And now if you set this mode and you wanted to be out of the way of System Chrome, now you are responsible for setting those margins and getting out of the way and knowing that they may be there and listening to system tray hiding, showing, and being able to move those if you wanted to do that. So by default, you're going to get the right behavior out of the box without you having to think that much. Or you can opt out of that and use the fullness of the core window. So again, this is what your app looks like with you doing nothing. Please set the page background to be whatever color background that you have. By default, the template set it to the application background color. And you opt out and you'll get more window space, but now you may run into a situation where you're responsible for writing some code there. So again, all those concepts in the control area, a lot of them are going to be kind of going through a deep dive in Sean Oster's session on building great UI using the XAML control platform. So I highly recommend you go to that session. I believe it's still today. I believe it's later in the day, but please go to that session here. Okay, so framework areas, and we'll try to go through these quickly. Framework areas to us are things around text, animation, input, scaling, and styling. I will say framework area also actually is data and data binding. There's no deltas in data binding between the platforms. So the features that are supported in both are there. So there's no if-defs that you would have to do for data binding, which is why I'm not calling it out here. Let's talk about navigation. The APIs are actually the same. What do you have to worry about? On the phone device, you actually have a physical back button. And on a tablet experience, your app owns the back button. That's a nuance that you and your app should take into account. Again, you could simply do it by doing some if-def and saying, hey, if I'm a Windows Phone app, I want to handle the back pressed event and I want to do some other things later in the code. Additionally, if you had a back button in your UI, maybe you would say, hey, if I'm a Windows Phone app, like don't show the back button in my UI because I have that hardware back button. So that's something very cognizant that you should be aware of. The project templates for universal apps actually already handle this for you. This is a snippet from the project template. So if you want to look and see how they do it, that's a good exemplar. And I think we'll have some great examples of these as well in the SDK samples. Robert Carmen is also giving a deep dive on this specific talk in general about navigation. The backstack, of course, on the phone is different because it's a system-wide backstack. So as you go through back in your app, you could eventually get to the start screen. Whereas on tablet experiences, as you go through back in your app, that's an app experience. So Robert's talk will go into the navigation model in great detail for XAML apps. Animation. So I've got some animations playing here. The API surface area for animations is exactly the same. They're exposed through theme animations and theme transitions, allowing you to use those and apply those as child transitions or entrance transitions or animations and storyboards, etc. The thing that is kind of tailored to the device for Windows Phone is some of the animations that you saw here. And let me see if I can run them again. So in the mail experience, in the mail experience, when you tap on an inbox, right, you see the user's name kind of fly out and become the top item of the details pane. And then in the theme selection, when we selected the color, we get all that tile view that kind of rolls in like an old school airport kind of view. Those are actually, again, exposed through the same API surface area, but are device specific for the phone. So we now expose those animations for you to be able to leverage in your apps. So that mail experience, you can now do in your app. If you have a list and you go to a detail page and maybe it's a product page, you can say, hey, I want this continuum navigation, and my thing that I want to continue is my product name, and it will automatically do that fly out for you. So that's something new to Phone 8.1 in the modern platform, is us exposing those system-level animations more to you. Similarly, that other animation, we refer to it as the reader board. That's not technically what the API is called. But that's something that you can do now in your applications as well. We automatically do it for you in grid views and menu flyouts and things like that, but you can apply that to some of your list scenarios as well. Good applause. I think I have in my resource slide, there's a deep dive on animation to show you exactly how you use all these and how you can do custom, pretty unique animations. Kunal is the one that I have it on my resource slide. I don't remember the name of it, but there's a deep dive on animation specifically on how to achieve all of those that are existing and also how to create your own. Text is an area where we have a relatively common area. These are all new features to phone developers that are made available to you. If you are a design-heavy person, some of these terms will make sense to you. If you have no idea about text alignment and things like that, you're probably wondering, what the heck is optical margin alignment? Find your designer friend and they'll tell you. And so these are all things that have existed in the Windows 8.1 tablet experience and are now exposed in the phone experience and are common, same API, same behavior. An area where the text is not the same behavior and is device specific is some kind of accessibility features. Now this is primarily an accessibility feature, but some people actually do take advantage of this. We call it text enlargement. So if we look at a typical inbox experience here, this is the default. I've made no changes to my settings here. I want you to pay attention to the subject line, which is the larger white text, and then the gray text, which is the from line is the white text, the subject line is the next one, and the preview is the third line there. So as I would go into my device and I would say, hey, I want my text size to be larger, the app automatically changes, right? So if we look, the from subject didn't change size, but if you look at the next two lines, they did change size. They responded to that accessibility setting of enlarging the text. And if we go even larger, again, it responds the same way. Your app can take advantage of this capability on the phone device and be able to use text enlargement. It's called Is Text Scale Factor Enabled, and you can opt into that on your text environments. Password box is another example of text input that's different. So on the phone, it's kind of has that character dismiss as you're typing it in, and also has a checkbox if you want to show the password reveal. Whereas on the tablet experience, it is just a text box with a password reveal button on it, and we don't actually delay characters. Running out of time, so I'm going to blaze through some of these. Custom tiles. So we want you to create great tile experiences for your apps. We have a catalog of something like 65 tile templates for you to use from. But we also know that those may not always apply for your needs. If you look at some of these experiences here with MyFitnessPal, Dow Jones, and our internal MyCommute app that have unique experiences. And these are basically bitmap rendered images. And you couldn't be able to, so tiles are generated as a background task. And on Windows Tablet, you can't use XAML to do that today, right? So a lot of people are doing server-side generation of XAML. In Windows Phone 8.1, we're introducing what we call a XAML rendering background task for you to be able to use background tasks, to be able to use XAML and render that content. Primarily, the use case we think about here is the custom tile scenario. Matt Heidinger is going to go through a deep dive of this on custom tiles as well. Scale factors and effective resolution. This is primarily a statement of, hey, when you're developing a common UI app, you should probably understand your target scale factors and device sizes and effective resolution. Not just screen sizes, not just pixels, but what is the effective resolution here? And this is something that you have to think about as you're developing your common UI and your layout. Peter Tor, I did not choose these titles, okay? So like if you have a negative reaction, blame Peter. So Peter Tor is giving a session on this, all about the scale factors and all about the calculations on how to think about these things later in the week, I think tomorrow. Styling and theming is another area in the framework that a lot of people take advantage of. Accent color is a behavioral difference. So we actually expose an API for you to use the accent color on Windows. We've exposed it for a while. It just only returns one color despite your personality choice. However, on the phone device, it provides your accent color, your user's defined accent color, and the controls use that as well. In addition, if you're a phone developer or you have a phone app, you may have been using like the phone text large text block styles and text block styles. Those are still available and going to be different, than on the tablet experience. There's no keyboard on a phone device, so by default, all the controls don't have their focus visuals as a part of the control template. So if you are doing stuff with focus visuals in common UI, if you are styling them, if you are expecting them to be there, if you're including your own custom styles, that's something to take into consideration. On the good news, the feature of requested theme overrides and high contrast capabilities are a part of the common platform now for phone development. So even if the user has chosen a light theme for their system personality, you can override that and say you want your app to be dark theme. So that capability through the requested theme API is exposed to you as a phone developer here. So other areas for you as XAML developers, if you're a control developer and you want to, or even if you're developing internal shareable concepts for your apps internally, you still, at this point, will still need two SDKs. They could actually still be the same binary, if if it was just a library. So JSON.NET is a great example that we used in the keynote. It actually is the same binary, right? And it's a portable class library implementation, but we still needed to add a reference to both of those. If you wanted to create a control library that is adaptive for your developers, either third party or internally, you're going to need to produce two SDKs, one for the phone project to reference and one for the desktop to reference as well. So you'll have to think about what does adaptive mean in your control library. And Navit's going to show in his session a tool that we're kind of putting out for preview to help make this easier in Visual Studio that kind of elevates that shared project type to something that can be used a little bit more common and less outside of just an application type. The other area is interacting with shell areas. Now, this is not a XAML-ism area, but most apps that are doing UI interact with these things, and I felt it important to call them out. So file pickers are very interesting, right? You want to either save a file or you want to load a picture or a movie. On the phone experience, there's a new model of doing that. Your app will get suspended in the background, and so there's a continuation model that the arguments will be provided to you. That is a difference of how the implementation of pickers currently exists in the tablet space. So that's something to take into account. And then the entry point differences for things like share and settings are different. I already mentioned the settings flyout doesn't exist on phone, but just the concepts of how a user will interact with settings. We have charms and kind of reserved spaces for those on tablet. We don't have those reserved spaces for, actually share there is, but we don't have those reserved spaces for settings on the phone experience. So those are some things of as you interact with the shell and some of these other experiences that you have to think about when developing your common UI across the apps. So I picked a set of questions that I felt were valuable, or a set of sessions that I felt were valuable as kind of jumping off sessions here. It's not an X-rated desktop development panel, I promise. I forgot the session number there. It might be, I don't know. It's your feedback, so. But these are other sessions that I recommend that will go into deeper dives of a lot of these concepts and specifically. Highly encourage you to attend some of these sessions, and they're throughout the week and today as well. So with that, I believe we're out of time. I thank you very much for being here and bearing with all the details here. The slides will be available, and happy to answer any questions. Please, 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 if you can, fill out an evaluation form. It's how we improve and decide what sessions are valuable to you, and both me personally as well as our team, of how we know we're doing in the product and how Build is doing as well. So please fill out an evaluation form. Thank you.